Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with BDEX's founder and CEO, David Finkelstein. What's new, David?
Hey, Jesse. What's new? I don't know what's new. It's been busy and we're trying to close things out before the holiday season, right?
Right.
Now we've got, I guess, one last great guest before we head into the holidays.
Yes. And it's a very exciting guest. So today on Deconstructing Data, we're thrilled to welcome Alexandra Theriault. She is the Chief Growth Officer of Spherical, Lodome's data collaboration platform. And Alex oversees that side of the team, working alongside brands, helping them maximize the value. So let's bring her in. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you so much, Jesse.
Hey, Alex. We're really glad you joined us today on the show, and we'd love for you to sort of kick it off for us. Give our listeners a chance to get to know you a little bit. So anything you can share about your experience and what led you to become Chief Growth Officer at Lodome would be super helpful, and that's a great way for us to kick it off.
Awesome. Sounds good, David. Thank you. I probably am a little bit of an anomaly in ad tech. I have been at Lodome for over 16 years. So I've seen many different chapters and iterations over those years. When I first started, Lodome was positioned more so as an audience ad network, and we were out evangelizing audience data well before there was really a space for it. We grew that over the years, and we're an early entrant into the data marketplace the DMP space, data management platform space. And we were alongside the cruxes of the world. And we rode that wave and kept growing and innovating over those years. And I led our customer success team during that. We've seen even more change in the past couple of years, as anybody in ad tech has experienced. And so I expanded that role probably 2 years ago into the Chief Growth Officer role. So I continue to oversee our customer success team, but I also work with kind of product and strategy. And as the concept of DMPs lost appeal and potentially relevance alongside third-party cookies going away, we had experienced a lot of pressure around like what is Lodome, where do they fit? I always joke we had our own identity crisis, and there was a lot of pressure to become a CDP. And at the core, that's not what we do. And we, kind of dug our heels in and wanted to keep our place in being data, making data accessible, offering the ability to collaborate with multiple different data partners, really underpinning some of the identity spine into the ad tech side of the ecosystem, none of which CDPs corely focus on. So we really complement them. It was great to kind of announce our positioning as a data collaboration platform earlier this year, with that kind of growing space in the ecosystem of all the different vendors and boxes you can fit into. So that's how I ended up here.
That's awesome. 16 years. That's amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
It's been a journey, I'm sure.
It has been a journey. When I hit, I think it was 12 years, I had that realization that I was like, that's like going from first grade to graduating high school. Like, you think about how long that lifespan feels like. And so anyway, onwards, it's been great. It's been a wild ride.
That's awesome. Yeah. And just having that historical data, that you carry is so valuable. But this is going to be a really great conversation. So let's get right into it. And really, we're going to be focusing on first-party data, to be specific, for our first two topics. But Alex, with your take on first-party data, why first-party data alone, it is so important, but why it alone, it's not enough for marketing success?
Sure. I do agree. I think it is incredibly important. It is what brands should be investing in, identifying what different first-party data sources they have and working to unify them and kind of make sure that they understand what that first party means across all those different touch points, which is a really challenging job in itself. I think we're reaching that point of maturity in brands that have been working hard to do this. And as I mentioned, like utilizing CDPs as a great tool to be that center of truth, create that kind of golden view of their customer. But there's now kind of an awakening that it isn't enough. There's only so much you can garner from your touch points with your existing customers. For example, we're coming into Christmas season. We're having a lot of engagement with brands these days as we're buying stuff and even just researching products and maybe even putting products in the cart online, but then abandoning the cart. We're planning to go to Alaska next year, which we're really excited about. I've made some purchases, but my engagement with a brand like REI, I bought some new backpacks for my kids to bring and go hiking with, but they have such a narrow view of me as a customer. All I bought is a single product from them. If they better understood that I was also looking into flights to Alaska, hotel rooms, rental cars, like all of those different transactional touch points, they'd be able to also make other kind of recommendations, whether it be hiking boots, water bottles, and jackets, appropriate for Alaska, maybe even travel luggage. They sell quite a few different products, but without that type of more panoramic view of their customer, it's really hard to understand that. And so I definitely believe that first party data isn't enough.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's often, we see this often where, we have companies that have first party data and they want to, leverage that. But to your point, knowing more about their customers is extremely important in order for them to make sure that they're reaching them and reaching them with the right product recommendations and things like that. That's where those walled gardens like in Amazon have sort of an advantage because they see so many things that we buy, right? And so once you get outside of those walled gardens, it becomes really important for like you're saying, data collaboration and being able to get other types of data in order to be able to make those recommendations. So yeah, that's really, really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not to mention just AI, mixing AI into the mix, the first party data, if it's good, it can fuel your AI in a really good way. But if it's bad, it can also, do some really big damage as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think at Lotomy, we talk a lot about first party data as a great tool for customer retention, cross-sell, upsell, and really strengthening the relationship with that existing customer. And it's a great input. And to your point, Jesse, it could be that great seed to fuel your AI, your modeling, but it's not enough to really power your customer acquisition strategies. I think that's where additional data sources that span different touch points, time, and demographic and behavioral attributes are really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that segues us into the next topic.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's we're kind of there, right? So what can you share with us, Alex, about your thoughts on what do companies need to do, like in order to better enrich the first party data?
Sure. I think just understanding what other data sources are out there. Again, was this narrative that was very loud in our industry and the media that kind of third-party cookies going away meant that third-party data is going away, and kind of any data outside of first-party data is not reliable. And I think we're coming full circle and understanding that there is really great data out there, whether it's signal that comes from contextual consumption, location-based signal, survey-based. We have some great survey partners that we work with, and we're kind of expanding those relationships because that's a great way to understand consumer intent, kind of brand loyalty, but then use that and kind of model off of it, put a kind of AI lens to it to create that scale and find those people who look and act like that. And then, of course, transactional could be working with retailers. So how do you access this? There's a lot of different ways. We know it's kind of available off the shelf in DSPs. We're seeing growing access to data in SSPs and kind of a general shift in the buying pattern closer to the supply side. We're really excited about what's going on with curation, and I know we'll probably talk more about that. Clean rooms and data collaboration platforms is a great way to access a little bit more of one-stop shop to bring together all these different data sources. And that's a great way to do it with whether it is a kind of a traditional third-party data partner or cultivating relationships with kind of new emerging second-party relationships, publishers, mentioned retail providers. And we're even seeing like brand to brand collaborations, whether that's two separate brands or whether it's maybe a conglomerate like a Diageo. They own a whole bunch of different alcohol brands. So maybe they're at a point where they're learning what are consumer trends and kind of attributes for somebody who buys Johnny Walker, and how are those the same or maybe different from somebody who's buying Guinness, and can they do their own cross-sell, upsell to those brands? And shockingly, I think that didn't exist even just a couple of years ago. All that data set in very separate silos, and some of the modern tools are allowing that to be more accessible.
Yeah, I think that's historically been one of the bigger problems, has been the siloed data. And now with the ability with data collaboration in the cloud and everything, being able to bring all that data together is definitely making it a lot easier to be able to study and understand and do analysis and really market better to consumers based on all these different data segments and sort of, pieces that used to be in all these separate silos that can be now all interconnected.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was at a marketing conference earlier this year, and just listening to some of the CMOs talk about the level of effort to like find out who internally owns the data, and then the level of effort to get access to the data. So in some brands, they considered that that first party data was owned by the finance team, and other organizations it was owned by the marketing team, other organizations it was owned by the technology team. And so like entire business cases were put together to just try to access it all within their own internal organization, which just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, it goes into data governance. It's something that we've talked about here as well, where it's like, who owns the data? And then, the larger the company, sort of more different data owners that you have, right? So you have finance owning some data, you have customer, support owning some data, you have whatever, there's technical data, there's marketing data, and there's so many different, silos that if they're not all communicating together, you have to go through all those channels and try to get that governance in place to allow all those channels to be able to share data with each other, even within one organization, let alone trying to do that between separate organizations.
Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah. And then you have data democracy, then we've talked about that as well, as making sure people who need access to the right data have that data. And then even just like data knowledge, like in order to have a democracy, you have to have education, right? So if you have different people putting in data different ways, you're going to create problems. So just making sure everyone on the team has access to that knowledge too. I mean, it's so interesting. But also partnerships sort of like ours, it also helps people to enrich that data in really beautiful ways that companies wouldn't be able to do if companies like Lotame and BDEX didn't partner and share and try to help piece together this crazy puzzle that us marketers are constantly trying to, battle with, knowing who our audience is and how to target them in the right place at the right time. But in terms of like data enrichment and first party data and marketing success for 2025, what is it that, really both of you think marketers need to know about data enrichment to succeed in 2025? Alex?
Yeah, I think I think there's a growing, marketers have always used kind of insights and analytics. I think there is a growing dependence on that, especially because there may be, we may see some impact like signal loss and connectivity. And so third-party cookies were an easy way to extend that data across all different devices and domains and timeframes. So using better insights and ideally insights that directly connect to activation instead of kind of learning about your customer with one platform and one way to define, enrichment, and then taking that information and plugging it into another platform and relying on and assuming that they are sharing the same kind of inputs or signal. There can be very vastly different methodologies that lead to those. So I think doing the best you can to make sure that the same data you're learning from, whether that's in your own internal tool and your own kind of AI-powered data science algorithms, or whether that's within a planning tool or an actual, an SSP or like an activation platform, trying to be consistent with that enrichment data, I think is going to set you up for success. And we talk a lot about enrichment and targeting. I think we're not talking quite enough yet about the back end of this, and that's the measurement to make sure that you're equally measuring how well it performed in a way that can be useful and actionable for the next campaign.
Such a great point. Yeah, we love to focus on the top of the funnel and not so much on the bottom of the funnel, but that's the important part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, David.
I think for me, Jassy, the one thing that I would say, and I I'm always pushing this, is data quality and understanding the quality of the data that you're using to enrich. That's always the biggest challenge is, how do you test? How do you understand the quality of the source? But, I think especially going now into 2025, I think we're starting to see more of a focus on quality. I think in the past there was sort of, hey, yeah, I can enrich it, or I could use this audience and let's just see how it performs. And there was always sort of this acceptance that there's going to be some percentage of bad data, and we're just going to sort of accept it because we don't know what to do about it. But I think as we get better and better at it, and we get better at measurement, for example, it becomes the sort of the quality of the data, especially when it comes to enrichment, because you're saying, okay, you have your first party data and you can sort of control the quality of your first party data. But when you're talking about enriching with third party data, you sort of lose that control. And so I think it becomes excessively important to understand where that data is coming from, being able to measure it and test it so you understand the quality of it versus, the quality of your own data, so that you're not sort of losing performance when you enrich your own data. It's something you need to be careful about.
Yeah, all great points. And so if you're not enriching your data, period, just go enrich your data. Step one. I think there's a lot of businesses out there that probably could be doing more of this and aren't. But I digress. Is there anything else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think to expand on exactly what you just said, it's like you take your data, measure performance, enrich your data, measure performance again, and sort of get a full understanding of whether your enrichment is actually improving your performance or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. Test all the time, right? Marketing is just always a big test anyway. Yeah. Anything else either of you would add about data enrichment and marketing success before we transition into identity resolution?
My favorite topic.
Oh yeah, that's the third topic, which is identity resolution and the future of audience targeting. So to kick off this topic, Alex, you're our guest. Could you sort of set the stage with audience resolution and the future of audience targeting?
Sure. I think we talk a lot about kind of having a multi-prong approach. I don't think there's a one size fits all. I also think when you start to get into different verticals, there's different strategies. at Lotame, we've definitely invested in the universal identity space, and whether you have the Trade Desk UID2 or LiveRamp's Ramp ID, we offer our own Panorama ID. There's so many different great solutions out there. I think it's been a bit of a rat race to see who can capture the biggest market share in the bid stream. And unfortunately, our perspective, and I think what happened is because third-party cookies have just like dragged on for forever, there's been we've lacked that urgency from the buy side to adopt them. And it's definitely been a chicken or an egg as far as all of the programmatic ecosystem choosing to do the work. And it's a lot of work to kind of change the fuel that powers the engine of your platform. And so it's been a slow and steady, but I think we're starting to see that critical mass where the top maybe 5 are bubbling to the top. And there's also a huge appetite for interoperability. So that way you don't have to contract with each one of these vendors to preserve that addressable connectivity that we're used to. I think that's one thing. I think that itself is driving buyers to and agencies to adopt curation through the SSPs. And so because when you curate a deal and you pair that high quality inventory with these universal IDs that are available, and you build a deal ID around that, a multi-pub deal ID, you kind of unlock the doors into any DSP. So the major ones like the Trade Desk and DV360 have been hesitant to adopt the majority of the universal IDs that are out there. Either they're not doing any IDs like at Google, or they're the Trade Desk and they have their own and they're kind of leading the charge with that one. But when you push a deal ID into DSPs, sorry for all of the acronyms, it's a great kind of backdoor into addressing all available inventory. So we're seeing a huge trend, and we work with a lot of the big holdcos who are either using Lotame's own curation services, or they're building their own curation seats, and they're trying to bring, when we get, going back to enrichment, they're trying to make sure they have enrichment partners that are available through those channels. So we're kind of excited about that one. And then the last one I would mention is what's old is new again, and we're talking about contextual again. I think that definitely serves a purpose, but the classic version of contextual has a time and a place. I think there's more modern versions of contextual where great data, enrichment data, and insights and analytics and AI is informing smarter contextual strategies that are available.
Interesting. Who do you think has done, do you know any brands that you could name that have done contextual really well recently? Like, what have those campaigns been?
I think you've got your classic, like Otto would probably be the first one that comes to mind, that doing contextual in that type of environment makes a lot of sense. I don't know if I can name a specific brand that comes to mind who's done that well. But I do think that there is a time and a place for it. But again, to kind of go back to where I started, I don't think any one of the 3 strategies, universal IDs, kind of the use of curation, or straight contextual, is enough in itself. I think there has to be a layer cake, and it depends on what the campaign goals are. It depends on the flight. It depends on the vertical that they exist in, and that is going to kind of determine what swath, like how large of a percent each one of those should be allocated.
Such a science and an art.
But also goes back to testing, to your point, like try something and then make some tweaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another interesting year going into 2025 with respect to identity. To your point, Alex, I mean, the cookie deprecation dragging on forever, and then I'd like to say they deprecated cookie deprecation and decided to leave it. I think that during that whole process, to your point, like all these new universal IDs came out or alternative IDs came out, and everybody was trying to find a solution with cookies staying. Now it's a lot of people are saying, oh, well, we have cookies still, so we can, kind of still do that. But I'm starting to see, and, talking to my team, we're starting to see changes on the IP side, where we're starting to see IPv6 come into play. And I know that, for example, like talking to Comcast, their entire network now is upgraded to IPv6. And while in many cases you're still seeing IPv4s coming through, I think it's just a matter of time until, ad servers start flipping the switch and IPv6 becomes more prominent. I don't know if it's going to happen in 2025 or not, but it'll be interesting to see if it does, because that changes the sort of identity landscape as well, because it actually makes it a little more difficult to target and to identify consumers across those IPs. So it'll be interesting to see what changes we see in 2025 for sure.
Yeah, we operate globally and definitely have diversified our sources of truth for our graph and how our ID works. So definitely wanting to make sure that there's multiple different signal that comes in, whether it's something like IP or an email made CTV IDs. And I think what we're aiming to do is kind of expand that globally, where emails are just not as readily available. So it might be phone number, it might be something else that's a more persistent identifier.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then we're back to phone and email and all of those things.
Yep.
We know LinkedIn has a lot of opinions about those too. But such a great conversation, and we could talk about identity resolution all day long. Anything else you would add, or anything you want to talk about in terms of like wrapping up 2024 in identity resolution in the future of audience targeting? So what did we learn from this year with identity resolution?
I don't think there was enough testing. I don't think
never enough.
No, I think there's going to be a lot of scrambling if and when everything kind of comes to a head. And we started testing, I think, like 4 years ago, and it's frustrating because we were able to prove the efficiencies available in the cookieless environments. And at the same time, it was kind of this unique win-win where publishers were able to increase their yields and their average CPMs in cookieless environments, while at the same time, brands were able to recognize those efficiencies. So the smart ones leaned in early and hopefully have taken advantage of it. I think we're going to see that normalize when third-party cookies finally go away, and we'll understand what this new norm really looks like.
Yeah. It just keeps getting like pushed off and pushed off.
Yeah. Are you guys, I brought up curation. Are you hearing a lot about that? Do you see shifts in buying patterns and making that data available in SSPs directly?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a space that we play in. We're primarily, twofold: identity. And so it's building and managing and operating our identity graph and licensing that, and two, using that to build audiences. And so, we're building audiences both with third party and with first party using AI. And those are kind of really our big tools. And so we're not really, sort of on the SSP side of the business and with respect to, looking at curation and things like that. But, what I definitely see that topic coming up a lot more in conversations like these. And I think part of that is because of sort of, the challenges that advertisers have had in managing targeting across, across DSPs. And so I think that's sort of what's created sort of this new trend of curation, and we'll see. I think it'll continue to grow in 2025.
100%. Well, I know we're 15 minutes until 5 o'clock, so I want to make sure we get time to ask you about your tech stack. So this is something we ask all of the guests who come on Deconstructing Data. And that is, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack?
Sure. Yeah, we use, I think, a lot of the classic ones. We do use Slack. We use both Zoom and Google Meet, and I think there's a lot of internal battle between those who prefer one or the other. I personally think Zoom has some better functionality, but the IT side of our house, our tech and engineering, prefers Google Meet, and I think because they also control what systems we use, eventually they'll win out. But another one that I've been leaning into recently that's been around a while, but I think has done a really great job, is Trello. They've made it very easy and approachable to do project management. We use it with our customers because it's really easy to kind of share all the open items we're working on, but then also link to all of our knowledge base and whatnot. So I would say that's high up in the list. And then the last one I would mention is Pendo. We use to do a couple different things. It's great for metrics to understand who's, like, of all of our customers who are logging into our platform, what are they engaging with, how often, how are they consuming the actual platform itself. But it's also got some great tools that you can overlay. So it's kind of a self-serve hand-holding to introduce new features or new products and kind of show demos of it and kind of drive more adoption within the platform. So that one's also a great tool.
Cool. I haven't used that one.
Yeah.
I used to use Trello, but then we adopted Jira internally, so I just started using that instead. But Pendo I haven't heard of.
I think Jira is a little more, I don't know, detailed.
And engineering and like,
yeah.
Wait, it's a great one too. We use it as well.
Right.
What's cool about Trello is, like, you can have stuff that is internal only, and then you can have boards that you can share externally. So again, if you're working with customers, it's a great way to share the space. I don't know if Jira, I could be wrong, but I don't know if Jira has that same functionality where you can invite an external party into it.
It's pretty simple.
You can create a separate board within Jira to do that. But but that's cool. Yeah.
Another great one's Miro. I've had a lot of fun playing around with Miro. I get a lot of hours wasted, like, creating designs and stuff and trying to articulate a vision I have.
Miro, is that Miro?
Yep. Yeah, and there's a free version, so you can definitely go poke around and check it out. And then there's a paid version, like an enterprise version.
Oh, that's really cool. I wonder, do they have AI too?
Everything does nowadays, right? Like, you're not relevant if you don't have some AI.
Yeah, I've been looking at different AI design tools. So you said it was design, so I'll definitely be checking it out because I haven't heard of Miro. There was Pendo and Miro. Those are the two I haven't heard of. Yeah. Awesome. Well, always love learning about new tools. Thanks for sharing those. But yeah, I guess with that, Alex, we do have 10 minutes still. So I am going to ask, just to provide a little bit of inspiration for the audience. I mean, you're Chief Growth Officer at Lotame. So, I'm sure there's a really great story that brought you to here. And if you could go back to when you first started working in, say, this industry, what is the number one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Yeah. Again, it was 16 years ago, so it's quite a ways. But I would say to network more. I think I was living in New York City. It was very accessible to join up with industry meets, parties, happy hours, just stuff where you can meet more people and kind of build that network. I think early on I didn't appreciate the value of that. And so, especially now, fast forward 16 years, married, 3 kids, 2 dogs, like, just getting out and meeting new people in person is harder, only made more difficult by the pandemic and so many people moving out of cities. And remote is great because we can have conversations like this. You guys are in 2 different states, but it's not quite the same as being able to kind of pop in and organically in person meet people. And it really helps the long-term trajectory of your career. It helps with, leveraging kind of partnerships and whatnot.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is a good point. And 3 kids. Wow, I have 2 kids. It's a lot of work.
I wanted to have 2 kids, but the second set were twins, so we went from 1 to 3. So we're happy as can be. We're the youngest. The twins are 6 now, so it's easy. The first couple of years was they don't exist. So we've blacked them out. It was survival mode.
Yeah,
I bet. That's amazing. Well, congratulations with all that. I love that. And in closing, Alexandra, would you like to tell the listeners how they could find you after the show if they wanted to reach out?
Sure. Yeah, I think best way is definitely LinkedIn. So my name is doesn't sound like what it looks like, but yeah, Alex Theriault would be the best way to reach out.
Awesome. Well, that's really awesome. Thank you so much for joining and for sharing all of that.
It was great. Thank you guys so much for having me. I know it's late in the year and we're all scrambling to wrap up those projects and get into the holiday season. So it was great to meet you. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, likewise. Appreciate you joining the show. And I'll let Jesse close it up for us.
Absolutely. And I'll use the correct QR code this time. I'm going to pull up right here a QR code to bedex.com. So if you're watching on video, you can, of course, just scan this with your phone if you're not on your phone watching it. Otherwise, just go to bedex.com if you're on podcast or on your phone. Head on over to the Bedex website, and we want to invite you to get powered by Bedex and build authentic connections with your audience to drive unprecedented growth in 2025. So just imagine taking the power of AI. I think everyone has used ChatGPT at this point, but taking the power of AI to craft your audiences and audiences that actually truly resonate with your brand and ensure your marketing is hitting the effort every time. So let's bring you closer to your marketing goals. We're eager to guide you. Just visit bedex.com and click on the Talk to an Expert button to get powered by Bedex. And reach out to us anytime. If you have thoughts about the show or you have anyone in mind who you think would make a great guest, you can reach out to us at info@bedex.com. Just go ahead and share your qualitative data with us so we can make the show better for you. And thanks again, Alex, for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Of course.
Thank you.